At 88, Genevieve Purinton was leading a rather solitary life in a Florida retirement home. Her immediate family had long since passed away, and she had believed for nearly 7 decades that her only child had died shortly after birth. However, a note arrived that would finally reveal the truth. As a teenager, Purinton became pregnant by a married man. She was single and had yet to graduate from high school. Back then, in the late 1940s, it was frowned upon for a woman to have children out of wedlock. As a result, Purinton's mother and father did not approve of the situation in which she found herself. At just 18 years of age, Purinton gave birth in Indiana in 1949. However, she would never get to hold her baby. Nurses at the hospital informed her that her baby had died. In December 2018, Purinton told NBC News, "I asked to see the baby, and they said she died. That's all I remember." At the time, Purinton believed what the hospital workers told her, that her baby had died. She didn't think to ask for her daughter's birth certificate and accepted that she had lost her child, focusing on rebuilding her life. Feeling alone, Purinton moved in with her grandmother after being warned that her father might harm her if she returned home. She finished high school and moved from Indiana to Florida, starting fresh in Tampa. She built a new life but couldn't have more children after a surgery to treat a tumor. Despite her health issues, Purinton lived a long life but watched all 8 of her siblings pass away. By December 2018, at 88, Purinton thought she was the last of her family. She lived quietly in a care home in North Tampa, unaware that she was about to find a new relative and uncover a side of her family she never knew existed. It all began in September 2018 when Purinton received a phone call from a lady named Connie Moultrip. Moultrip was raised in Santa Barbara, California after being adopted as a baby. She was always aware that her parents were not biologically related to her. Nevertheless, she loved hearing about how they came to welcome her into their family, and the fact that they chose her to be their own no doubt made her feel special. Moultrip recalled how her parents would talk openly about her adoption. In 2018, she told Inside Edition, "My favorite bedtime story was how my parents walked up and down the halls of the hospital looking at all the babies until they found me, and then they stopped. It was sweet." However, Moultrip's happy bubble was not to last. Sadly, her adoptive mother died when Moultrip was just a small child. Her father subsequently remarried, but he too fell ill and soon passed away. As a result, Moultrip had lost both her adoptive parents by the age of 5. In 2018, Moultrip's own daughter, Bonnie Chase, revealed that her adoptive mother had died of cancer, and shortly after, her adoptive father was diagnosed with a heart condition. To make matters worse, Moultrip's stepmother was reportedly abusive. As such, hers was not the happiest of childhoods, with no major maternal influence in her life. Moultrip supposedly always fantasized about meeting her real mom, and she did actually look for her biological mother during her 30s, but her efforts proved fruitless. Eventually, it seems life got in the way of Moultrip's quest to find her family. As an adult, Moultrip settled in Richmond, Vermont, enjoying a career as a nurse and later as a massage therapist. She had just one daughter, Bonnie Chase, who herself went on to have 2 children. As a result, by the time Moultrip was in her late 60s, she only had 3 blood relatives that she was aware of. But all that was set to change in 2017 when Chase bought Moultrip a DNA testing kit as a Christmas present. Chase thought her mom might like to learn more about her genes. However, Chase was also interested in learning more about her own heritage, so she got a kit for herself as well. Chase could relate to Moultrip. Like her mom, there was a whole side to Chase's family that she didn't know. In 2018, Chase explained to Yahoo, "I never met my own biological father, and growing up, it was just me and my mom. I remember mom trying to find her birth mother, and it was hard to see her go through that. But well." Chase and Moultrip both longed to find out more about their family backgrounds, but neither of them took the DNA kits seriously. Chase would later tell NBC News it was just a cool Christmas present. In fact, Moultrip felt so lax about her test that it took her some time to even send it off for analysis. But if Moultrip had known how the test would change her life, she might have completed it sooner. She explained to CNN, "It took me a while to use it, but when I finally got the results, I went from having only 3 known relatives, a daughter and 2 grandchildren, to 1,600 relatives. I was floored." Among the relatives The DNA kit had linked Moultrie to a long-lost cousin who introduced her to her biological family for the first time. The pair struck up a conversation, and Moultrie quizzed her newfound relative on her family tree. That's when things took an unexpected turn. Moultrie knew the name of her biological mother, so she divulged this information to a relative online. Recalling what happened next, Moultrie told CNN, "I told her my mother's name was Genevieve Purinton. And my cousin said, 'Oh, that's my aunt, and she's still alive, living on her own.' I couldn't believe it." In a shocking twist, it turned out that Moultrie was the baby that Purinton believed she had lost in 1949. It seems that the nurses had lied to her. The child hadn't died at all. Instead, she had been taken to an orphanage, ready to be adopted into a new family. Later, Moultrie reflected on why she may have been taken from her mother in such a callous way. She told CNN, "Because she was an unwed mother, she was told that I had died. She continued her life not knowing I was still alive." Sadly, Purinton was not alone in this kind of experience. Ann Fessler, the author of the 2006 book, The Girls Who Went Away, explored the pressure that pregnant single women felt to give up their babies during the period between the close of World War II and the legalization of abortion in 1973. She interviewed over 100 women who had begrudgingly surrendered their children to protect themselves from the shame of being a single mother during the 1940s and 1950s. Legitimacy was usually considered the woman's fault, a symptom of her psychological shortcomings. As a result, it was often viewed as best for them to be separated from their babies. Unmarried mothers had little option but to hand their offspring over, receiving no support from society to help them raise their children themselves. Forced adoptions were disturbingly commonplace in the era in which Moultrie gave birth, and the fact that she was told her child had actually died is a particularly grim reflection of social attitudes at the time. As Purinton herself put it to the Daily Mail in 2018, things were different back then. For Moultrie, it seemed that now, at age 69, she was finally going to meet her biological mom. This was to be a reunion she had been dreaming of since she was a child. Moultrie's daughter Chase told NBC News that her mother would fantasize about being rescued by her mom since she was 5 years old. After getting Purinton's contact details from her cousin online, Moultrie reached out by sending her a card with her phone number, so Purinton could call if she was ready. On September 8, 2018, Moultrie finally received the call she had been waiting for. She answered the phone and heard her biological mother's voice for the first time. Moultrie had left church early that day, and 20 minutes later, Purinton called. The conversation, 70 years in the making, was emotional. Purinton told Moultrie she thought she was her mother, and Moultrie confirmed she knew her original name, Margaret. Their first call marked the start of a meaningful relationship. They began talking regularly and discovered they had a lot in common. Moultrie was thrilled to have found her mother, saying they looked alike and shared similar health issues. She noted that while Purinton had wanted to be a nurse but couldn't afford it, she became a cook instead, and Moultrie had worked as a nurse for 34 years with a love for cooking. Moultrie finally got the chance to meet her mother at Purinton's retirement village in Florida in December 2018. She later recalled the moment she first set eyes on her biological mom to Inside Edition. "I walked into her retirement home and I knew it was her because she walked with a walker. There was only one woman there with a walker. She turned around and it was just like looking in a mirror. I looked just like her. We just walked over to one another and both of us started crying." The reunion brought many tears as Moultrie and Purinton reconnected. Moultrie shared 69 years worth of life updates, including that she was now a grandmother and great-grandmother. Moultrie encouraged others to seek their biological parents, noting that while not everyone has such a happy outcome, it's worth trying. Ancestry Agnes Jasmine Yemen praised the company's role in the reunion, expressing hopes for a lasting relationship. Moultrie also planned to connect with her half-siblings and was amazed to discover her family had grown to over 4,000 people through Ancestry.